Spanish town. From the one of their foreign, one of the best. Daddy take care. If we tell daddy so we're hungry, daddy sell lunch.
One of them.
One fit them a go school, a good treat to get. Barber come, trim we you them clean, the dentist come clean, we picking them teeth. We get a nice bag, we get a pocket, and we get to money. Daddy never hide from way. If we have a fight, daddy just come on, man.
Why you got given the name Daddy? How you got the name Daddy?
You know, I don't know, and that's in the daddy, but everybody just call it daddy. On treat with, or I'm love with, and love eat with, and show we love the look set a baby them, and him and them that. So every little party, I keep on picking, I keep on partying, invite them and give that. So
well, you know, I'm telling you what they say. I don't know, right? They say he gave orders for people to die.
Which people?
I mean, anybody who he would want to take over.
Then look how much people are dying in Jamaica. So daddy gave orders for killing all Jamaica. Which people?
And I'm just telling you what they say.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Today.
That's why I ask you.
Because you have 100 more. I got talk now. 5 of us said bad, and 95 of us said good.
But Daddy was a great man to all of you. You know, some people say that men like these do these things to hide behind badness.
No, we're not sure. We don't know about that. I know about that. We don't know about that. We don't know with that. He's not sure with that. All in sure love and care. That's all. Everybody. All along with the road want fix. Him want fix. And I him do this. I him do this. What you think? We are going to mourn and everything. We are going to feel away. But what we are going to do?
Well, that is one of the residents in Tos Spen or Tos Meadows, where the area leader, the gang leader, was killed, right? So we are seeing that the residents or, you know, representatives of the constituency was speaking and spoke very highly and glowingly of the Don area leader, that is Thicman Lobon, Othniel Thicman Lobon, who was murdered by the security forces last week, Wednesday evening, I believe. Now, that is interesting, the sort of commentary. And my question is Prime Minister Andrew Holness the legitimate Prime Minister of Jamaica, or are the gangs? Is Prime Minister Andrew Holness the legitimate Prime Minister of Jamaica, or are the gangs who have replaced him, or who seem to have replaced the Prime Minister as the legitimate Prime Minister of Jamaica? Because it is not a normal, or this is not a normal circumstance or situation in which you find that residents are suggesting that when roads need to be fixed, when their children need to be taken care of in terms of lunch money and their school supplies, and also when they need to go to the dentists and the doctors, that this Don leader took care of their problems and their basic necessities. Now, we heard the same thing in West Kingston when Christopher Dudas Coke was being extradited to the United States. Prior to his extradition, the residents protested against two states, against the US and also against the Jamaican state, because they understood that they were in search of their Don area leader, that was former Christopher Dudas Coke. And they were saying the same thing, that Christopher Dudas Coke actually took care of them. And anywhere you go in Jamaica in which you have these Don area leaders, that is the similar story is often proffered. And we wonder, what is the role of the state in modern Jamaica? Have the gangs supplanted the role of the modern state in Jamaica? Is the Jamaican state even a legitimate state? These are some of the questions that the journalists should be asking, and we're not hearing anything coming out of their mouths. Right? Now, it seems to me every day you wake up, you hear that we have a new curfew. Curfew is here and curfew is there. Jamaica is synonymous now with curfews. Curfews in Manchester, curfews in Christiana, curfews in Kingston, the corporate area. And yesterday, we woke up to a very sad news that a soldier was gunned down on Malines Road. Now, whilst he was in his vehicle, it seems to me that two marauding criminals who were riding on bicycles went and they attempted to kill. Well, they fatally shot him. I think he died. Right? So he was fatally shot. So that is what is happening in modern Jamaica, that you are not safe anywhere. You're not safe in your homes. You're not safe on the roads, the major thoroughfares. It doesn't matter if you're uptown or you're downtown. You are just not safe. And it seems the government is actually confirming that the criminals have taken over. That in almost all areas of society, the criminals have taken over. And we see here an article that was written on Loop, right? This is Jamaican Loop News or Jamaican Loop News. And this article was published, I think, sometimes last year, right? June 23rd, 2024. So it's quite a recent article. And this is what the Bailey has to say. I can't remember the name of Bailey, right? So this is Bailey speaking. Now listen to what Bailey is saying. All the top gangsters in Jamaica are in prison. I repeat that. Bailey is here suggesting, is intimating that the top gangs, he didn't say some, he said all the top gangsters in Jamaica are in prison. Now, you would have thought that somebody who represents the government would know what he's talking about. It's not like me, who I'm just talking and I'm not, aware of what is happening in the government, because nobody's revealing these things to me. So I make sometimes speculations in terms of who is saying what, and I might not be certain because I can't guarantee, I can't confirm, I can't corroborate. But Bailey should be able to confirm and to corroborate whatever he suggests or whatever he is intimating. And he's suggesting here, he suggested not some or most, all the top gangsters in Jamaica are in prison. Several persons who are leading figures among the island's main criminal gangs are currently incarcerated, according to Deputy Commissioner in charge of the crime and security. So he's the Deputy Commissioner in charge of the crime and security, Bailey. In fact, the senior crime fighter said all of the island's top gangsters, quote unquote, have been locked away in the island's prisons or detention facilities, bringing a halt to their nefarious activities. Listen to what he's saying. This is Fitzgerald, and he's the Deputy Commissioner in charge of the crime and security. Listen to what he says here. These are not my words. These are the words of the leader here. Never in the history of Jamaica we have seen so many gang members. This is what he's saying. Never in the history of Jamaica we have seen, not have we seen, but we have seen. I'm quoting from him now. So if you hear me saying we have seen, it should have been never in the history of Jamaica have we seen. But he says, never in the history of Jamaica we have seen so many gang members, persons who are called influencers of crime, now in prison, declared Bailey during a panel discussion at last week's staging of the 10th biennial diaspora conference in Montego Bay, St. James. Listen to what he's saying. That's Bailey. All the top gangsters in this country, referring to Jamaica, are in prisons, behind bars, he said, as members of the audience clapped loudly. So, one of the things is that they wanted to deceive the members of the diaspora who were concerned that crime and violence was out of control. The senior lawman said improvements in the Jamaica Constabulary Forces, that's the JCF investigative skills, have helped to improve the security of the nation's citizens, because the members at the conference, at the diaspora conference, they were concerned about the out-of-control murder rates in Jamaica. And they were questioning this leader, right? This assistant, whatever he is, security on crime and violence, assistant commissioner on crime and violence. They were questioning him as regards the high crime rate, the high murder rate in Jamaica. and he wanted to save face. So he had to tell them that all of the top gangsters in Jamaica are behind bars, that they have been incarcerated. And one would have thought that based on what we're seeing in Jamaica, then if they're in behind bars, why don't you go and dismantle? Why hasn't the government decided now to dismantle, to have a fulsome dismantling of the garrison constituencies? Now, having asked that question, listen to what the Prime Minister of Jamaica, according to what they're saying, the doctor, Andrew Holness is saying here. Because everything is titled in Jamaica, even though they have no substance. These are titles without any form of substance, right? Gangs are not your friends. This is what the Prime Minister of Jamaica is telling the citizens of Jamaica and all those who live in the garrison constituencies, in which, by the way, when we say garrison constituencies, you must understand that the Don leaders are the state. Or is the state, well, are the state, because the gang leaders are. The gang leaders are the state, right? It's not the state. Andrew Holness is not their prime minister as far as they're concerned. These are gangster-led constituencies. These are gangster-led constituencies, in which means that the Don controls what is happening there. How often have we heard the tension between these gangsters and the members of parliament, including the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Edward Seaga? We learned that Christopher Didoscope. There are rumors that, that he actually smacked Mr. Seaga across the face. Because Mr. Seaga or the members of parliament who sometimes want to, because they have to show some sort of, they're competing for power. And sometimes their paths cross, and it sometimes is not pretty, because the member of parliament, at the end of the day, he or she wants to demonstrate that he or she is the one in charge. But the criminal elements, because they live in these communities, and in many cases, in many times, it seems that they have acquired tremendous amount of wealth, because this guy had to have acquired, that's the Othniel Thickman Loban, had to have acquired a lot of wealth for him to be able to take care of so many residents, so many citizens, by sending them to the dentists, right? Building the roads. This is another thing, the basic things like building and the maintenance of a road. The Dons are doing that. So everything that a government should be responsible for, the gangsters have taken over. And that is the reason for which I am posing the question to the Prime Minister. Is Andrew Holness, is Dr. Andrew Holness the legitimate Prime Minister of Jamaica? Or are the gang members, or are the gangsters the real prime ministers, quote unquote? Because we have to ask that question. And we are not talking about one Jamaica here. If it is in fact, and we got to call a spade, if it is in fact that the gang members are the so-called prime ministers and leaders of Jamaica, we don't have a state. What we have are divided pieces of that country called Jamaica. All right? And Marty Perkins did ask the question years ago, have we even forged a nation? Has Jamaica even been able over the years to have forged a nation? I don't think we have, because we are warring tribes on that little rock called Jamaica. We are tribes. And the politicians are the ones who have divided us for a long time. And right now they are bigwigs, and even though they are not in control, but they pretend to be. And they allow these people to control, right? And they give them contracts, right? Because the politicians had to have allowed this. And all of them who are pretending as if they're members of parliament and they are representing the people in parliament, while behind the scenes, these Don era leaders are the ones who are leading the people, who are governing them. They are the real government. It is sad. It is sad. And when we hear what the lady had to say, you might look down on her, but she's speaking the truth. It's cold, it's chilling, right? It's unsavory to listen to. At the end of the day, she is speaking the truth. That the Don leader, Thickman, took care of her. And you don't bite the hand that feeds. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. And that is what she's doing. Should she be supporting a criminal? No, and I wouldn't. But the fact of the matter, when we see facts staring us in the face, we've got to call a spade a spade. And the state is not fulfilling the role for which it was created. It's just a state on paper, but it's not a state in practice and in substance. Now, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is saying, did I read it already? Prime Minister Andrew Holness, the doctor, the most honorable. Now listen to all of this title. This is coming from the JIS, the Jamaica Information Service, and look at how they are styling the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, doctor, the most honorable. Now, who gets all of that? Why not say Prime Minister Andrew Holness, right? And this is why they feel so important, because you have made them into kings, even though they have no substance, even though Andrew Holness is lacking in substance, right? But you have to give him all these titles. Is Prime Minister, comma, Doctor, the most honorable Andrew Holness, comma, is appealing to law-abiding citizens in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, to not support gangs the gangs that have been wreaking havoc on the town. This is what the Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Andrew Holness had to say, and I quote, "There is a sense, and we have seen it displayed publicly, that somehow the gangs are protectors of the community or are your friends. The gangs are not your protectors. They are not your friends. They are using you," he pointed out. Right? Listen to what Andrew Holness is saying. The plan of the government is not to target and harm communities in pursuit of the gangs. So he's suggesting that if he pursues the gangs, it would be targeting the community. I'm not sure what he's saying here. The strategy of the government is to separate gangs and criminals from the community and law-abiding citizens. How are you going to do that? I take this opportunity to appeal to the law-abiding citizens of Spanish Town not to support the gangs, not to be enlisted in their activities. That's what the Prime Minister is saying. Okay, so let's ask the question. If they do not take the gangs as their friends, and the state is not fulfilling the role that it should be fulfilling in these communities, who is going to fill the void? Who is going to fill the void? That's the question I would like to ask the Prime Minister. Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. Who is going to send their kids to the dentists? Who is going to give them school supplies? Who is going to fix the roads? Are you going to do it? Have you been doing it in other parts of Jamaica where there are no gangsters and so forth? Have you been doing that? Have you been fulfilling your role as the Prime Minister, as the so-called legitimate Prime Minister of Jamaica? Have you? That's the question that we need to ask Dr. the Most Honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness. Okay? Now listen to what the Prime Minister is saying, because he's suggesting that the government is paying rather close attention to the situation, not from a security perspective, but from a development perspective. The government is investing several $1 billion into critical infrastructure such as the Spanish Town Hospital, which is an over $2 billion investment. It seems to be that the Prime Minister is saying this because he said something also that he wants to invest in Spanish Town, but the gangs are preventing him from doing so. Oh, the gangs are preventing you, so who is stronger than whom? Who is stronger than whom? Is the arm of the state stronger than the arm of the gangs? That is what I would like to know. And that is what I would like to ask, or their Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. I'd like to ask him that question. Right? Who is stronger than whom? So if you want to develop Spanish Town so that the people can benefit, so that they won't take the gangs as their friends, why don't you go there and clean up that community? Clean it out. I am suspecting here that based on what the Prime Minister has said, that there were investment, contracts, whatever was there, and there seems to be some amount of friction between the gangs and the state. And perhaps they threatened the state. The Thickman guy threatened the state that if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to do whatever he's said he was going to do. And it seems to me then was when the state had to go after him and they killed him. I'm not saying that is the case, but it seems like that is the case because the Prime Minister here is intimating too much. He says, Spanish Town has incredible opportunities. This is what the Prime Minister is saying. Spanish Town has incredible opportunities. It has an incredible history. It has great commerce and great potential for development, but it is all being suppressed by gangs and crime. So this is not coming from me. This is coming from the Most Honorable Dr. Andrew Holness. He's saying that it has a great potential, that's Spanish Town, great potential for development, but it is all being suppressed by gangs and crime. And so if it is being suppressed by gangs and crime, Mr. Prime Minister, why don't you stop it? So the investments can flow and that the people cannot be so tethered to these gangsters and gangsterism. Why don't you do that? But it doesn't seem, therefore, that you have the testicular fortitude to do that. You don't have you're not wearing the pants. Evidently, the gangs are wearing the pants. And you might take out one life here and there, but the system remains intact. The system of gangsterism, the system and the institution, because it's now an institution. The gangsterism has been institutionalized in Jamaica. It is a system. And how are we going to uproot this systemic problem? I don't know if we can at this moment. I don't think we can. The only way to do it is ethnic cleansing, and that is not going to happen. Right? We would have to clean out the state completely. Because this is generation upon generation, at least from the 1970s. We've been having this and we have not tackled it. As a result of that, it's like a festering wound, a festering sore, and we cannot control it at this moment. And that is what, at this point of our history, at this juncture, at this stage of Jamaica's history, we're seeing where crime and violence and done area leaders or the legitimate state have supplanted the Jamaican state. Jamaican state is unable at this juncture of the history to control criminal elements. And that is why we are a crime-infested society. That is why we see the high murder rates being registered in Jamaica day after day. And our citizens are also wicked. Because when you're talking about these things, you don't see a lot of views on these things. You don't hear a lot of comments on these critical issues in our society. These critical matters that affect our society. You don't respond. You want to hear gossips like what is happening to what's his name, I forgot his name, Lawrence Rowe. And you begin to respond and well, those are gossips. And I'm not suggesting that what happened to him was not, a travesty of justice, right? Yes, it is. But the things that you should be putting your energies into responding to and proffering some sort of solution, you're not doing that. You hear little videos here and there about who is sleeping with whom and what MP is having with what and who says what is who. And that is what cultivates your imagination. And the more substantive matters are the matters that go silent. And you know, all of you do the same. If one person, if you have a crowd of people responding, you respond. If nobody is responding to this video, even though the video might be very important, you're not responding. You keep silent. Because you have a controlled mind. You can't think for yourselves. And you're just following the flow, the current, the wind, and not understanding that you are living in a society in which you do not have a legitimate state. Is Prime Minister, the Doctor, the most honorable Andrew Holness, the legitimate Prime Minister of Jamaica, or the gangs, the legitimate prime ministers of that little rock? Please let me know. Thank you so much for joining. I hope to see you in another video. Please remember to like, to share, and to subscribe. See you in another one. Adios.